All right, guys. Well, we've been talking about the Michigan high school football playoffs coming up here for quite a while now. We've been anticipating with our prep spotlight the playoffs coming, and they're already here. It's kind of crazy to think about. So joining us in the prep spotlight for the second time is Sam Ali. You can follow him on Twitter at Sam Ali Sports. He's a Mid-Michigan now sports director, so he's plugged into the scene. And like I said, second time on, so a returning prep spotlight guest. So thanks for joining us, Sam. You pumped for the playoffs or what?
First of all, are we allowed to humble brag at all?
Sure.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Who was hyping up Corona before the season started?
Yes, sir.
True.
Now they faltered a little bit, Sam. I mean, they're faltering a little bit.
That's what we were talking about before we recorded. Ted called their game, a couple nights ago against OE, so he saw it firsthand.
Instant classic.
Yeah, they definitely. So I mean, let's start right there. So Corona, they finished the season because they lost against Ovid Elsie. Finished the season at 7-2, but still a great regular season for the Cavaliers, Division 5, and they're opening with Williamston, a tough team. Ted, you actually said you called one of their games earlier this year.
Yep.
Very similar style to Corona, but they get to host. They'll be at Nick and Neese Field. Corona hosting Williamston. They're in the rest of the district, Olivet, Portland, some other really good teams. If you had to look at that one, what are you thinking? Are you still hyping up Corona, or are you thinking they got a tough one against Williamston?
I think it'll be tough just because you're looking at two 7-2 teams, and it looks like 57.8 in terms of the points, and Williamston's at 53. So should be evenly matched. And when it comes to those games, you really got to stick with the home team. And Corona's just got that ability, guys, to run the ball, play, clock control. And when they got to take a shot downfield, they can do it. And that's really sometimes the difference when it comes to the playoffs. It seems like everyone's kind of run centric, but when you can throw and actually have the threat of throwing, that's a huge difference. I would still give them to be the favorites in their game.
So a lot of the teams in our area, there's Davison, Corona's one of them, Portland, Williamston, a ton of solid teams. I don't think there's anyone that really stands out above the pack, maybe a Durand. I asked you this question, I believe, first time we had you on earlier on in the year. Now that you see how the matchups have kind of laid out, is there a team you think has maybe the best chance in our area to end up making it to Ford Field?
I feel like it's a cop out, but Frankenmuth, I've seen their games. It's not just that offense; their defense is holding teams to like 6 points per game. They had like 3 shutouts. They've beaten quality teams in that process, but man, they are just so good. And if you want to play a low scoring game, we learned that in the Freeland game, that if you want to go low scoring with them, they can hang with you. And they ended up shutting out Freeland. And if they want them to put up points on the board, they can do that. They've honestly been the best looking team that I've seen this season.
By the way, we
avoided their district, so that's a good thing.
Absolutely. By the way, this segment brought to you by Capital Sports Fieldhouse. And Sam, in the upper divisions, would you say Davison maybe ready for another run?
A deep run, a state title run. I don't know. I'm just looking at this. Are they in the same set? Okay, making sure they're not in the same set as like Belleville and all those other teams. Some of these Division I teams are so good, and it's just going to be a struggle for them. I mean, I could definitely see them making it to the regional, regional final. I don't know. Man, it's just going to be really tough for them when you've got Rockford and Brighton on their side, and then even if they can get past that, to get onto Belleville, I mean, Division I is going to be tough for them, but they'll have it.
Yeah, and I saw Rockford just made a huge statement when they smoked Caledonia on Friday. So I mean, the Rockford's always good, I feel like, but I mean, with that win, you got to think, geez, they're about ready to make a run. Jared mentioned Durand. I don't know how much you've covered Durand or paid attention to their story. We had their head coach on a few weeks ago, and so we close to where we grew up, so we kind of keep an eye on the Railroaders. Are you buying their stock, or you think like maybe a little bit of fool's gold with that offense that they're running, kind of similar to Frankenmuth a little bit?
Exactly. And the toughest part is that they're all excited, undefeated for the first time in forever, and some quality wins down the stretch when people were questioning if this team is real. And then they're matched up, I believe, against the defending state champions.
Lansing Catholic. Yeah. A little bit down, though.
That's that championship. You're talking about experience against a little inexperienced. And I believe when I was looking it up, Durand, they faced Durand in the first round last year, and then knocking them off and ending their season. So there's a little bit of familiarity with their. At the end of the day, the quality wins at the end of the season made us feel like that this is not a team that's just going to get blown out or just blown out of the water in the first round, no matter who they're facing. So I give them as good of a shot as anyone else. But man, they're going to be tested right out of the gate. You keep doubting this team, they're probably going to keep proving you wrong.
It's kind of like in college football. Like, this year, Alabama has, looked a little human. But if they get to the playoff, or if they get, it's that experience. It's kind of what you're talking about. They've been there. Nick Saban's been there. They know what they're doing, even if they're a little down. So it's kind of like New Lothrop. I mean, Durand beat New Lothrop with a big statement win for Durand. And they end up in a district with Pewamo, Westphalia, who's a little down this year, but still it's PW. So, like, is that – you think New Lothrop has a chance to make a run? Have you paid attention to the Hornets, or you think this isn't a year for them?
It goes back to the experience. It's that same coaching staff. They know what it takes to win. When it comes to, at the end of the day, now we're moving into do or die. We're moving into the one every week could be your last week. You just can't count out a team like that has that experience, that has that winning championship experience. It's one thing when you're getting to the playoffs and losing, in the first round or in the second round. These guys know what it takes to move on, and I really think they'll be able to right the ship. I don't know how deep they'll be able to go, but they'll pull off some wins. They're not good. They're definitely not going to be a one and done.
I'm all on the railroad train. I'm going to tell you that right now. And
he's bought his tickets. The tickets are bought.
I bought the tickets. And Sam, I go back a long way against Durand when I played in high school, and they were our biggest rival. So it's a little tough to come out and say that, but they're for real. I mean, they downed Marine City, which was ranked number 5 in week 9. So they're rolling into the playoffs. I do agree, the experience factor could be in effect. But the question I have for you, do you follow the 8-man game much as well? Because I know Merrill's having a fantastic season up in your territory, and some of the other teams up there in 8-man football, which has become really popular for the smaller school districts.
It's become really popular, but just my humble opinion, the UP just owns 8-man football right now. I don't know who's going to be able to knock off teams like Powers North Central. Munising is playing extremely well. They've really, really owned it, and it kind of lends itself to those small communities who I was there at the very beginning of 8-man up there in the UP when the communities were so against it. So you're talking about these historic, a school like Munising that was so, had so much tradition, and then they felt like downgrade to 8-man. Hey, it's still the same. It's still football at the end of the day. You got to play the game. I don't see anyone getting past any of those teams. They're probably going to be cruising to the championship.
Yeah. Are there any matchups that the brackets just came out. So, I mean, it's still, digesting the brackets, but any districts, any matchups, anything that you're looking at that you're like, oh man, I can't wait to see who wins this, or anything like that?
I'm excited for the rematch, Lapeer and Clarkston. I don't know. I still think Lapeer's they've got the ammo. They've still got the weapons to pull off, and it would be I wouldn't even call it an upset. It would be a mild upset, and then we'll see what happens with Davison and Grand Blanc. If we can see Davison and Lapeer again, and then when you see it, they just played them, so it's still fresh in their minds. It wouldn't be a gimme that Davison will probably blow them out again. I don't know. Lapeer, we can't disregard what they did the entire season just because of what's been happening in the last couple of weeks.
I love their nickname too, the Lapeer Lightning. That just kind of rolls off the tongue.
It lends itself to highlights because then you can be like, and the Lightning strike again. And
Yeah.
it's just perfect.
Almost
so
writes
awesome.
itself, right?
Well, Sam, we really enjoy what you do there. Before we sign off, and we appreciate you taking the time out to join us here on a full podcast, because we're all over the prep scene and the football playoffs. This is awesome. You took time out. Tell our listeners again the best way to check out what you do.
You can check us out, of course, on Twitter is basically where I live, at Sam Ali Sports. And then on Facebook is the same, Sam Ali Sports, right there. And then you can go to our website, midmichigannow.com, where we've got all the updates. Just uploaded all the brackets right now, so you can take a look and see of our local teams. I believe I counted about 35 right around there, our mid-Michigan teams that are going to be in the playoffs. And then, of course, check us out on Fox 66, NBC25, 5 and 6, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 10 p.m., and 11 p.m. Might be later, though, because we're going to have the World Series, guys. So
All right.
on Fox, we're going to have those games where we're going to be, doing football highlights at like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So,
I remember those days, Jared, you might too, because we started off at a local, the Fox station in Grand Rapids. And I remember when baseball was on Fox, you were just kicked back, waiting for those games to end. So that's funny you say that.
World Series, whatever year, I think it was when the Red Sox won it, 2018 or whenever that was, and there was like a 15, 16, 17 inning game that we had to wait for it to
Yeah.
That was a rough night.
I was at a Fox affiliate then. We didn't get out till like 4:30. We were looking for a Denny's afterwards to try to find somewhere to eat. It was just so bad. But we'll have all that. And then, of course, like I mentioned, we'll have the World Series on Fox as well. Be sure to tune in for that.
All right, awesome. Sam Ali for the win. Thanks for joining us again, Sam. Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, next up on the Prep Spotlight, we have a first-time guest, but have really enjoyed what he has done on TV, Brandon Green of ABC12, star of the Highlight Zone. But before we talk to you about some of the teams in our area, since it is your first-time appearance, give us a little background, how you made it over to the Flint area and on the air.
Wow. I was in South Dakota before I came to Flint, in Sioux Falls at KDLT. That's basically where I cut my teeth for 9 months out there, covering Coyotes, Jackrabbits, all the high school sports out there.
Nice.
That was my first job out of college too. So 9 months fast forward, TV station got bought, decided not to stay, and just moved on to Flint.
Wow.
Yeah, and the real draw that brought me to Flint was I came on a visit, and just hearing like all the history like behind it and what sports means to Flint, obviously the Flintstones, and then you'll be hard pressed to find another city that has 4 NBA players, prominent NBA players that people know who they are. So it's a special place. It's a very special place.
No, Flint's cool. I mean, we grew up, about 20 minutes outside of Flint, but definitely my parents are from Flint. Ted has Flint connections. Everyone, Jared too. So yeah, we definitely understand what Flint's about. It's really cool, especially ABC12. We were talking before we started recording. It's a like a deep history of sports directors and sports anchors at ABC12, the Greg Molzens, the Ed Phelps and all that. So like, is it, you mentioned going through the tapes. Is it kind of cool going through the archives of ABC12?
Yeah, it's kind of like every day you walk in, you're chasing ghosts. So to speak, because everybody still talks about those guys.
Yeah.
Another one to mention in there is Ryan Slocum too, in his storytelling. So when you look at all their old stuff and what they used to do, it like makes you go to another level and makes you appreciate what you do even more.
So you're originally from like the DMV area.
Yep.
You've been in Michigan for a short period of time. What do you make of the Friday Night Lights? Is it at least compared to where you come from? How does it stack up?
It's right up there. I would say Maryland, for me, is just a little bit better, so to speak, like more energy, and that's just because I grew up there and I know the history. Yeah. And then there's a big separation between private schools and public schools in Maryland. Like the private schools, DeMatha, Gonzaga, St. John's, that whole WCAC, like you're walking out there, you're seeing probably 12 to 15 NFL players on the field at one time. Like Caleb Williams over there at USC, I remember watching him for Gonzaga football. going up against DeMatha.
Right.
So it's just like the talent level is just different, which you get that here. When you go to some of these bigger schools, like you see that type of talent level. But the DMV is different. If you ever go to a Friday night, make sure to head over to like a DeMatha or somewhere like that. It's like a college, for real college type atmosphere.
Yep. Speaking of talking about all the talent and stuff, one that's kind of close to us, we've had him on the podcast, Brendan Sullivan, now starting down at Northwestern.
Right.
Which is, he's a starting quarterback down there. Played at Davison though, and I know, Davison is a traditional power in the Flint area. What do you think about their draw? Are you thinking Davison is poised for a little run to Ford Field, or you think they've got a tough draw there?
It's looking that way, but that bracket is tough. Because we all knew last week when they were going up against Lapeer, that was basically they were playing for the number 1 seed in that bracket. So that was a huge win for them. And then they just beat Grand Blanc 2 weeks ago. But you always know in these type of matchups that anything can happen. Because when Davison played Grand Blanc this year, GB was up 14-0 in a blink of an eye. And then Davison just rattled off all those points straight. But anything can happen in those games. So if you don't bring your A game, you may be going home that night. Because then, like, once you get past Grand Blanc, which they're going to throw the kitchen sink at you, then you have to deal with Lapeer and Clarkston. And you've seen both of those teams earlier this year too. So it's just, that's one of the more interesting brackets. But Davison they're just so complete. But what I like about them is their offense and their defensive line is just nasty. They got a bunch of big dudes that just like to play football and get dirty. And that's what you need in the playoffs to control both line of scrimmages. So it's going to be interesting to see how much they throw it out with Braylon Himalayan and Henry Karstarf in the third, because Henry has really come on these past couple weeks, but they also got AJ Hill and then Jalen Flowers back there toting the rock. So they could cut you a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
You're in the Flint area and you get a chance to cover the bigger schools, but here in mid-Michigan, we cover some of the smaller schools, like our alma mater, the Corunna Cavaliers, are having a nice season. They've faltered a couple games this year, but they still have a lot of talent. But really, the story of the year is the Durand Railroaders in our area, undefeated, first time since I think 1982. They've gone 9-0, and I think it even goes back to the 70s when they finished undefeated. Tell us about maybe some of the input you've been getting from Railroaderville over there.
So we went to a couple games for them this year, but this past Friday was like my first time actually going to a Durand game since I moved here. It's like an atmosphere you won't find it, because it seems like the whole town is at these games.
They are. The whole town is there.
The thing that's cool is that I thought was really dope is they had the like railroad signs and stuff on the scoreboard
that light up.
It would go up. I was like, that's sweet.
Well, I got to ask you this: did you get jumped out of your shorts when they blew that train horn for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, because I got there like right before halftime, so I heard it at halftime. So it wasn't like it like scared me a little bit. It still threw me off. I'm not gonna lie. Like, you think like a train's like gonna go past like the end zone or something like that. But their football team is like really good. I wish I could have stayed longer. I was only there for the third quarter when they were playing Marine City. But Gabe Lynn, Jesus, he had one of the best quarters I've seen in a long time. He had like a 25-yard touchdown run. Flipped that next series for the Marine City. He got an interception. Took that back to the house. 2 series later, he scores from 51 yards out. I'm like, this team is for real, because you see what they did in the MHSAA this year, like just breezing through Montrose, Lothrop, which you think like, okay, like they could do that, like, but then like to see it up close, it really set it in stone for me that these dudes are for real, like, and they're ready to play some football.
They play a style of football that's going to translate into the playoffs. They can run.
Yeah.
They've got an offensive line that's basically like a GLIAC offensive line. You know, a bunch of guys that could probably play D2 football, maybe D1. You know, smaller D1, and they can run the ball. So I mean, I'm very curious to see how far they go, because at least my memory, Ted's memory, you know, we all played against Durand. You know, they've been up and down. So to see them up, I mean, up like this,
Way up.
It's really cool to see. Ted mentioned Corona. I know you guys have covered them a little bit too. 7-2, like Ted kind of mentioned. They're matched up against Williamston. You have any thoughts on that bracket, that side of the bracket, I guess, that district? You think Corona is going to maybe make a little run, or you think they're, maybe like 1 or 2 games in, and that might be their peak, I guess?
It's all going to come down to defense for Corona, because we all know their offense could put up points.
Yeah.
We obviously know that, but you look at these tight games, like they pulled it out against Swartz Creek, but then the next week they turn around and lose to Ovid Elsie. It's all about those like little situations, because their quarterback is, correct me if I'm wrong, Wyatt Bauer, right?
Yep.
Big kid, can throw it, can run it. He's basically Cam Newton for offense. You know what you're going to get from him, but it's just like all like, those like little pieces, like D-line, the secondary, making sure that there's no mess ups, because I just got to look at this Williamston team real quick.
Williamston 7-2 also. Pretty similar style. I mean, Ted called the Ovid Elsie game a couple nights ago, Coronas. And how many times did they fumble, Ted?
They fumbled 7 times, 2 muffs and 5 fumbles, and that cost them. And then they had a 2-point conversion, should have got it, so for the win. But Williamston has a very good quarterback, and they got some talent. I think they match up well, if you want, in my opinion. So it's going to be a good matchup in that first round. Of course, Portland, always very strong, and they're on the other side of the bracket. And Corona, I think also, geez, I'm taking over the conversation, but they're strong at home, but they've had a little weakness on the road. They got drilled by Goodrich, and Goodrich is a very good team, and so they'll protect the home turf. Probably they'll play a real good game, toss up on win or lose, but then they'll have a tough matchup probably with Portland.
There, and in the playoff, it's just all about, to be honest, it's all about who really gets hot. Talking about this, it's just the run game. Like if you could run the ball and you can control the clock and really put pressure on the other team, then you could basically control the game, do whatever you want to do. So it's going to come down to that for the Cavs, in my opinion.
Yep.
I asked the same question to Sam, who we had on this pod as well. It's Ford Field or bust, if we're being honest, for a lot of these teams, or just who people end up caring about at the end of the year. So if you had to pick one team, maybe it's Davison, maybe it's Durand. If you had to pick one team you think that has the best chance of making it to Ford Field this year, who would you pick?
I think it's Frankenmuth's year.
Same answer Sam had.
Yeah, that's
yeah, they're legit.
Because I watched this ever since I got here. Frankenmuth, I don't think I ever seen them lose a regular season game, which sometimes it's for them. It just hasn't translated to Ford Field yet. So it's like, how many times you got to knock on the door before they finally kick it down? Because that's my thing. Because you have to love every single year they have a quarterback that can throw it on time. They have a running back that's like a little smaller, but he's big, he's stocky, and he's fast. And their offensive line is going to create some holes that you didn't even think was going to be there. Like that's every year, and their defense is going to come at you and they're going to hit you.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Put all that together.
Good formula.
At one point, that's going to get you to Ford Field.
Well, that's a good way to end it here, Brandon. We appreciate the time. And I just was going to ask you, you got a nice little teamwork on your Friday nights there with your new guy, Yosef. You both do a great job with the highlights. We appreciate what you do. Tell our listeners the best way to follow you.
Best way to follow us is on social media. Get on Twitter. I'm on Instagram too at B Green Reports. Facebook as well. We post a lot on there, but also ABC12.com or just Channel 12.
There you go. Well, keep up the good work. We appreciate the time, Brandon.
No problem. You fellas have a great night.
You too. Thank you. All right, guys. It's the best time of year, man. I mean, it's this, and then it's March Madness for high school sports. They're both great in their different ways. Selection Sunday, man, it's there's so much hope, so much excitement in the air. I mean, I loved watching the selection show on Valley, man, because I loved watching and seeing all the different look-in lives of the different watch parties. I mean, I
That's
saw
cool.
Rockford's. It looked like Rockford fit their entire team into somebody's basement. I mean, must have been a mansion, which doesn't surprise me for the area.
No,
but
not
that
in
was
that
a
area.
little shot that I saw. It's just a lot of fun. But one thing I want to throw out before we maybe dive into some of the specific games and stuff, it really clicked when I saw the Jason Hutton live tweeting the Caledonia Rockford game this past Friday. And I thought the same thing when we did that game last year. And the same thing when I worked at Fox 17. But, I've seen a lot of games, on the east side of the state this year. Detroit, seeing the best teams that Detroit has to offer. My whole life I spent it in mid-Michigan, seeing all the best teams that Flint, Lansing had to offer. We went up to Traverse City Central. I've seen up north games. I've seen that atmosphere. Spent a few years, at Fox 17 covering the west side. And Matt, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts. Ted, you as well, having maybe not gone all over the state, but definitely been Michigan. I think the west side of the state has the best atmosphere, the best teams, pound for pound. Go to a random game, on the west side, it's going to be two pretty solid teams. That the crowd's going to be good. It's going to be a turf football field. It's going to be a beautiful stadium. In my opinion, my short, young life, I really do think the west side has the best high school football, Michigan high school football. When you think of that, you think of West Michigan. What do you guys think?
I mean, I'd have to agree. Yeah, I'll be curious to hear what Ted has to say. He's been doing it much longer than us, but I remember having like an eye-opening experience the first time I started covering high school football for Fox 17, going to Rockford, going to Lowell, going to East Grand Rapids, and just being like, oh my God, this is not Durand. This is not Ovid Elsie. This is not even
And that's not a knock at them either.
No, not a knock at all. Because I think I appreciate both. So obviously Rockford, when they've got 10,000 people there at that amazing stadium, is awesome. Like you said, it's maybe one of the best. Muskegon, when that place is full, it's maybe one of the best atmospheres in the state. But biased, when we were playing in the playoffs and even through the regular season at Nick and Neese Field, that place was jam packed and it was 4 deep around the fence, and they had to bring extra bleachers in for the visitors. That also is an awesome atmosphere. Take those smaller communities like Durand, like Brandon talking about the railroad signs and all that stuff at Durand and the train whistle. Like, that's just as cool as in East Grand Rapids or some of these other ones. You just have to appreciate it a little differently.
Right.
And then Owasso, obviously. Owasso's field might be one of the coolest settings in Michigan. Now, obviously, they don't fill it up like Rockford maybe, but that setting has to be one of the coolest high school football in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
The second they get turf on that thing, man, it's going to be hosting semifinal games.
Yeah.
I don't know when they're going to do it. Maybe, I mean, they already did their bonds or whatever, so maybe we're a bit of ways from them getting turf. But as soon as they do, Ted's going to be sitting up there on a semifinal Saturday calling a game.
Hopefully I'm still above ground by that time. but to answer your question, my heart's obviously right here in mid-Michigan, but you can't argue what's going on in West Michigan. The success of the teams there year in and year out. Yeah, the facilities. Every time we had to go over there and broadcast a game in one of those stadiums, it's just awe-inspiring. And, it's first-class accommodations all the way. So it's hard to argue that. But to Matt's point, too, when you get a big game at Corunna Nicanese Stadium and there's 4 deep along the sidelines and the visiting stands jam-packed, the home stands jam-packed, the game's live on the radio, there might be some live video there. That's a great atmosphere, too. Yeah. So I agree with Jared's open. This is one of the best times of year.
Yeah.
Well, it is, man. I remember, I think we've probably talked about it in years past. I remember, man, the juice is flowing. We were sitting at Little Caesars in Corunna on my senior year waiting for the selections. Fox Sports Detroit back then, not Valley Sports Detroit, but it's just so cool, man. The whole community is bought in. We knew we were going to be hosting a game, so everyone in Corunna is going to be there. And you were broadcasting the game, Ted, so we knew we were on the radio. We knew we were going to be on ABC12. We knew we were going to be on, Fox 66, Fox 4. It's just like, it's that whole thing. I think Ted or Jared, you mentioned it when we were talking to John Webb, Durand's head coach. Like, the kids just soaking it in. Like, what a time. Now looking back, we're older, we're wiser now. Like, looking
Hopefully.
back, it's like, man, there's a lot of other things that you do in your life that are fantastic, but it's like, that's like the time of your life, man. You got nothing to worry about. You just playing high school football with the kids that you're friends that you grew up with. I'm getting up on a soapbox and I'm starting to preach, but man, it's such a cool time. It's, you know, when you start talking about it again, it's like, man, that really was fun.
It really is. Before we get into, Corona, I know we want to talk about them. I just want to throw out a couple of things of note on kind of what we've been covering on the East side. Great opening round matchup that we're going to be doing. West Bloomfield versus Cass Tech. Cass Tech barely snuck into the playoffs, believe it or not, which is crazy to say, man. When I say they're so loaded with talent, it's just unbelievable what you get to watch on Friday nights on the East side. Talent, I'll give it to the East side of the state, but atmosphere and all the pageantry of what I think high school football is, it's mid-Michigan, it's the West side. But that's going to be a very fun one. Cass Tech versus West Bloomfield. I mean, D1 talent all over the field. That's kind of like your bad luck draw, Matt, back when you were in high school. Kind of two very, very good teams, just given the vicinity. They have to match up Corona versus Grand Rapids South Christian back in the 02 playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Another great one that I wanted to throw out is and this is just not even a game. It's just a team, man. We had the privilege of covering Belleville versus Brighton this past Saturday. Belleville rolled in 2 unbeaten teams. Brighton, an 8-0 undefeated D1 school. We know Brighton's legit. Great coach Brian Lemons, and Belleville put a running clock on them. They are legit. We can talk about this D1, how it's up in the air. I still think it's Belleville's to lose, man. They are impressive. Their quarterback, Bryce Underwood, number 1 ranked sophomore in the entire country.
Wow.
He's the real deal. I mean,
Sophomore.
If you saw last year's state finals, I think he had five passing touchdowns as a true freshman. Shades of J. Rue Campbell, except this guy's 10 times better than J. Rue, man. It's a blast to see him throw. My favorite part about him, as a high school quarterback, he threw it to 8 different receivers on Saturday. I mean, how often do you see that? And the thing is, great runner, he never uses his legs. He doesn't need to. That's kind of like one of those things, man. If you have to run or if you have to throw, if you can just pick somebody apart in the pocket, in high school football level especially, I mean, why wouldn't you do that? They are incredibly good. They have a defensive coordinator, Bill Sheridan, I believe is his name, former NFL coach.
NFL and college.
Yeah, NFL and college. I mean, talk about just the perfect blend of coaching and just talent all over the field. I mean, it's going to be tough for anybody to take them down. They are definitely the runaway favorite, in my opinion, in D1. They are damn good.
Yeah.
Well, let's briefly here get into our area just a bit. I mean, our Corona Cavaliers, a couple tough road losses this year. You know, the one Friday night, give all the credit to Ovid Elsie because the comments we were making in that third and fourth quarter was Corona just couldn't put them away. Ovid Elsie just kept sticking in there. Corona helped them a lot by fumbling the ball, but it's a cliche, but it definitely was an instant classic the way that game finished. In fact, we were talking off air about the 1 second to go in regulation. The Ovid Elsie kid, a foreign exchange student from France, drilled the ball, and I called it good at first. I said, it's good, you know, and all of a sudden I see the referee waving it off, and everybody in the press box going, what on earth is happening here? You know, it was that close. So it was 1 second. They go to overtime. Ovid Elsie scores, kicks the PAT. Corona scores on their possession, and then they run the swinging gate, have the center, the guy that snaps the ball, open in the end zone, pretty open, and just couldn't complete it. It was tipped up and intercepted, and Ovid Elsie went wild. And it was such a great atmosphere because you guys have played at Ovid Elsie, I think. I don't know, you know, what kind of atmosphere it was when you played, but it's a neat little stadium. You know, we talk about Wilman all the time, but they have the sunken field and the home stands are cut right into the hill.
Yeah.
But now they have turf. And for the very first time, they brought out all maize uniforms. It was just a tremendous.
They were coming for blood, man, and it's a bummer for Corona. We're all Corona guys. Yeah. I talked last week how important it was to win that last regular season game. I mean, we were floundering. I just to bring it back. Nobody wants to hear about my career, but at least I could draw this parallel. We were kind of floundering my senior year, heading into week 9 against Chesaning. Had a bit of a tune-up game. Ted, you probably remember, beat them by 60, I think. And we were just rolling high heading into playoffs. I wonder if a loss like that, you know, overtime, had the game right in their grasp, had a guy open in the end zone, just missed him. I wonder how much that'll haunt them. And they're going to need their A game against Williamston. And I got to throw this out there, man. What a fun little side story. Former Corona coach Kyle Robinson, now special teams coordinator at Williamston. I mean, wouldn't it be almost just kind of hilarious if they just had some perfectly dialed up like reverse on a kick return or something like that? That just to bring a little extra juice to the press box up there, Ted. I mean, how much do you think special teams could play in this game?
Well, let me tell you this. they instituted the swinging gate, so it won't be any surprise for Corunna because they brought that out against St. John, and I know right where that came from.
Yep.
That's funny. We talked about Corunna's this. So Williamston is this Friday. I would assume they're playing Friday night.
Yeah, pretty much everybody is.
Yeah, at Nick and East Field. So that's going to be a great game. And then a couple other teams. We talked to Brian Calloway about Portland. He brought up Olivet also. Potential teams that Corunna could see if they advance.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a tough draw, but like you said, I mean they faltered a couple times, but they've been playing really well. If they play their game, they definitely could win that district.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's kind of like a district of death. I feel it's like Team USA in the World Cup every year. They're always quote unquote in the region of death. That's kind of what that feels like. 4 pretty solid teams. I would say Portland's probably the favorite, but I wouldn't put them as more of a touchdown favorite than whoever wins the Corunna Williamson game. It's just gonna be a lot of fun. That's a classic old CAAC white conference region right there that I'm excited to see the winner of.
It is, and then on the Division 6, they got a nice little district there with Durand taking on Lansing Catholic, and on the other side of the bracket, Almont taking on Ovid Elsie, and you could see a rematch of Ovid Elsie and Durand. And as you mentioned, Jared, Ovid Elsie's got to be flying high into this game, even though it will be a road game. You never know what can happen with the Marauders. They feel pretty good right now.
And like we said, I don't remember if it was Sam. I think it was Sam Ali said, about there's something about teams that have been there before, like a Pewamo, Westphalia. I think they're 5-4 this year. So for them, a little bit down, but they've been there before. They get it. Durand, this is a little bit new to them. So is that going to play a factor? Are they riding a little too high type of thing? Are they just, on fire and
I think they're on fire, man.
They get smacked in the face by right. No, I don't think so. But
yeah.
Last year's state champion is coming into Durand. A little down, but it's still a good team.
Here's the thing that I think is important for Durand. They are going to have home field advantage all the way up until that semifinal. And we heard Brandon talking about that. Durand used to have I remember the toughest place I ever played high school basketball was against Durand. And they had like one win that year. Ted, I think you called that game. It was a villainous atmosphere.
Oh, that gym's tough.
Like at that football field now that they're like undefeated, rolling into playoffs, man. I mean, it makes me want to go see a game. Ted, I know you're kind of scratching at the bit to be able to call one of the games. I mean, that's the place to be on Friday nights for the rest of the playoffs is whenever Durand is playing.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. We've talked about some of the other brackets too. I mean, you brought up Pewamo, Westphalia, even down at 5-4. They're hosting their first game against Bath, and that looks to set up a rematch from many great games. PW and New Lothrop.
Yeah. I know, man. I'm very curious to see how that district shakes out. It seems like 2 teams that are very proud, maybe having a couple down years, but you get into playoffs, man. You get rolling a little bit, win a game here, get some momentum rolling, and anything can happen.
Well, and I think people forget. They look at the win-loss record and maybe aren't into it as deep as some of us. I mean, they play a lot of bigger schools. New Lothrop's upsizing, and Pewamo, Westphalia, their 4 losses are all the big-time schools. So
there's battle.
That's why they're hosting a first-round game with 4 losses.
It is kind of funny seeing I know a 3-win team got in. I mean, it's kind of bizarre seeing that. Like, I guess making playoffs doesn't really mean anything, but it's a lot better seeing that happen than what used to happen in the past, where a very well-deserving 5-4 team just happens to play a very tough schedule, happens to get in this new system. So
I really like this new system. I think it's probably the most fair way they've had ever since they started the playoff system. I really do.
I agree.
Before we sign off from our prep portion, I do got to send a volleyball shout out to Owasso senior Kendall M. She's going to be moving on to play at Saginaw Valley State University. She got her 1,000th kill against Clio this week. And Corunna's Nalaje Sims, she's going on to play at Missouri State, also hit the 1,000 kill milestone in a 3-set win over Brandon. So a couple of good female athletes there winding down their careers. So we keep an eye on everything, guys.
When's the last time you went to Battle Creek, man, for volleyball finals? Have you ever?
Yeah, I've been there. It's a great atmosphere. I went there. Geez, time flies. Might have been 7 or 8 years ago. I think Corunna had a really good volleyball team, and I went down there.
It is awesome. I tell you, that was one of those like very long days at Fox 17 when I was there from left the station at 7 a.m. Didn't get back till about midnight.
Yep.
But it was very fun. I was very pleasantly surprised, man. Packed house, crowd's loving it. The
Pretty
teams
cool
are
old arena.
amped up. It's a great environment.
Yeah, it
It
is.
was cool.
Capital Sports Fieldhouse is the home of hit and pitch and a whole lot more. The 10,000 square foot turf field can be used for all indoor sports training, including football, baseball, basketball, softball, soccer, and many other activities. Hit and Pitch has 7 indoor batting cages with full pitching tunnel and the state-of-the-art Hit Tracks training system utilized by MLB organizations. Located in the old Capitol Bowl J.C. Penney block on South Washington in Owasso, Michigan. For more details, call Capital Sports and Hit and Pitch at 989-472-4624 or online at capitalsportsfh.com.